Well, I just want to thank Aspika for the opportunity to tell a little bit about my story, my experiences, and just kind of go from there. So a little bit of background on myself and my family. I live in Alberta, Canada. Grew up in a family of 6 kids, so by today's standards, a pretty large family. But I had 2 brothers with neurodiversity. So I have one brother with autism and one with ADHD, OCD, a couple of other learning challenges there. And just because of that, my brothers needed a lot more support in the household. So I found myself, my mom always joked that I was the sandwich kid because I was sandwiched in between 2 brothers with special needs. So a lot of the kind of time and care went to them, right? And because of that, I've actually become a lot more independent. It's actually worked out kind of in my favor. But there were things that I wish I had my parents at the football games and had them show up to more events and stuff. That my brothers did take precedence because they needed that extra care. But this really helped me get responsible from a young age. Right? Whether it's helping them with some of their needs or even just helping around the house a little bit more. I know I actually started going to conferences with my mom because she, back in the 90s, there really wasn't much for resources for people with autism. So she kind of spearheaded that, started a nonprofit back in the 90s to help bring more resources to parents whose children had autism. So I found myself going to these different conferences, learning from great speakers like Temple Grandin. I actually met with Deepak Chopra as well, learned a lot about autism and neurodiversity. And one of the big things that I found was because my brothers were so high functioning, because my mom had done a lot of early intervention with them, I didn't really see them as much different, right? I know that there was a couple social differences that they had compared to, some of their peers, but really I didn't, it wasn't as big of a distinction. So I'd go to these conferences and there would be, kids sitting there in wheelchairs who can't talk, who can't walk, having severe tics and things like that. And for me, I was just, my brothers were just a little bit odd, but it wasn't a big, it wasn't as big of a challenge as I've seen with other families. So I know at one point there was a siblings panel and I was sitting beside, some other siblings of people with autism and other neurodiversities. And they were telling stories about, helping their brother get dressed and helping him get out the door and just like helping them eat and all these basic things that I didn't really have to deal with. And I definitely felt like I didn't have those adversities that they did, and kind of felt like an outsider in that. But what happened was throughout this panel, I just talked about life, just kind of like this, just talked about my brothers and stuff, and kind of came out of it thinking, I don't see what value that created for anyone. And then had a bunch of people come up and thank me because they were talking about how it gave them hope for their children, right? They've been told by doctors that they're never going to walk or they're never going to talk or anything like that. Like my mom was actually told that one of my brothers would never talk. And, she got him into a lot of early intervention. He had some speech delays and some pronouncing things a little bit differently, but with enough work, he got past that. Right. So it helped me see that, no matter where you come from in the spectrum, you do have a unique perspective or a story to tell. Right. So that really helped kind of show that there is some value to just sharing our stories, right? I was pretty ingrained into helping people with in the autism community, just working with my mom there, and then going through high school and college, helping getting my brother into he went into NATE there, so it's a technical college, and then going through schooling there, and then actually going to work in a restaurant. So I started working in a restaurant back almost 15 years ago now, and I really like the idea of it because working in the bar scene, getting to drink and have friends out and all that, it seems like it's going to be such a fun time. But one thing I found was there just was a lack of support, right? And I know whenever I see people on TV, they go, "Oh, I couldn't have done it without my friends, or I couldn't have done it without my family." I always found myself kind of just being the, just the guy that does it on his own, right? So I would have friends that are going down to the bar just across the street, or have family members that didn't really come by or say hi or really give me the time of day, and I just found myself in a not a great environment, right? The bar scene is not really a great place to raise your kids, so to speak. So I found myself, drinking quite heavily, being surrounded by people that are doing drugs and alcohol pretty much nonstop. And it just wasn't where I wanted to be going forward, right? I didn't see a whole lot of future there. It wasn't growing to the point where I could be a little bit more hands off with it. I always found myself having to be there 7 days a week, 12-hour days pretty much. I got into a pretty serious relationship with my now fiance Miranda, and I never really got to see her, right? I was at the restaurant. You can't really get married when you're married to a restaurant. So I found myself, kind of stuck in between, well, do I want to have a family and start a family? What kind of life would I really be able to give them if I'm stuck at the restaurant 24/7? It just didn't make a whole lot of sense. It was in this time that I was struggling with different things and looking for different opportunities in a way, and just found myself, I was actually, my mother-in-law kind of told me about World Financial Group, and I was like, this, honestly, I wanted to learn a little bit about money and finance. I saw it as a good opportunity to do that, and really nothing more than that, and just found myself falling in love with the company and the people that work there, and really just enjoyed it a lot more than what I was doing with the restaurant, right? They're both elements of service. So I found I like to serve people. I like to give people what they need. But when it's a bottle of wine or a plate of food, that's very short-lived, right? They may be going home with a full stomach, but they're going to be a little bit emptier on the wallet, and it's pretty short-lived there. So to be able to do something that's a lot more tangible and affecting people's lives going forward is something that I've always wanted to do. And this really gave me that opportunity, right? So I started with the firm part-time, just learning about, how we can help people out. And then I actually transitioned full-time during the pandemic there in 2020. I noticed, the restaurant business is not a phenomenal business when you can't go out. And I was starting to fall out of love with it anyhow. So it kind of cemented that decision for me. I was able to sell the restaurant and get out of that, and then start doing this full time. So it was a really different shift, right? To go from restaurants and bars to money and finance. But I found there was a lot of correlation, right? In either sense, you're going to be working with people, helping them get what they need and serving them, right? That's really ultimately what I think we're all here to do, is just be of service to others. So I hope my story can help, help people see that service is really a great way to be, and to help other people, right? So one of the big things that I found with World Financial Group is it's not just a financial firm. We do have a big emphasis on personal development. And this was something that was hard for me to grasp at first, just because I had always heard a lot about, limiting beliefs and personal development and things like that as a kid. So I kind of got polarized against it. And I thought it was a whole bunch of mumbo jumbo, new age science, whatever. But then growing up, I found it to be really just super impactful, right? It sounds so simple that it can't be right. We're always looking for this super complicated solution. But when you think about things like having goals, when I was in the restaurant there, my beliefs on what I could do just kept getting squished down, and I kept bargaining with myself about, well, I guess I'm okay with this and I'm okay with that, and just kind of shrinking. But having goals is a very common thing, and it's a great way to actually get towards your goals. If you have no goals, you're just going to wander through life aimlessly. And that's where I found myself in the restaurant. And one of the first things when I started in the firm was, you have to have goals. You have to have clearly written goals so that you can accomplish what you want to accomplish in life. And I was like, I guess that makes sense. I always think of it as a race. If you start the race here and you start running in this direction, but what you want is over here, you're not going to get there very quickly. So even just having a bearing on where you want to go, right? It's that whole aim for the stars and at least you'll hit the moon, something like that, right? So that's a little bit of how I got involved into the financial sector. And this actually gave me a really good background to kind of transition a little bit into, working back with people with neurodiversities. So I started working with Autism Society of Alberta back in 2022, so that I could give back to the community and just help the people that have been in situations similar to my brothers or even similar to myself. Right? I know a lot of times there are a lot of challenges that people with neurodiversities will have to face, and one of the things that I find, even for people that are neurotypical, if that's even a thing, I joke all the time because I see ADHD tendencies or autism tendencies in so many people that I don't think anyone is 100% neurotypical, right? But if that's the term, right? Essentially, there are people that are neurotypical that don't have any challenges, in terms of development, and they still have difficulties figuring out their own finances. So if you put that extra layer of complexity of a neurodiversity or a disability on top of that, I think they just need extra care, more care. So that's one of the reasons why I started with Autism Society, was to be able to give that extra level of service and care to be able to help those people, right? So I've been able to help them get access to some of the different government benefits that are out there. There's actually a lot of programs that are built to help these people in these situations, or help people in low income situations, because a lot of times if you have a neurodiversity, you're not able to work, or not able to work a full schedule or a 40-hour work week. So there are different supports for, like, income support for low income households, for people with disabilities. And I find one of the biggest issues is people, they just don't know these exist. They don't know the supports are there, and they don't know how to access them. So I like to kind of handhold the whole way and see what things they can qualify for, how we can get that in the most effective manner. And it's honestly really gratifying. I actually just had a friend of mine the other day who's got a couple of kids with one with ADHD and one with autism, and we were able to get him essentially a $20,000 payment from the government just by refiling his taxes, getting the disability tax credit all sorted, getting that all worked out, right? And when you're close to that line, right, when things get a little bit squirrely, $20,000 is something pretty impactful. That's something that will really change your life going forward. So I was really happy to be able to do that. I think, just going forward, I want to just help more and more people find their financial success, right? Whether they are neurodiverse or neurotypical. I think it's just such a muddy water, and there's so many people that complicate it and use all these really highfalutin, complicated jargon and things like that. Really, it comes down to some pretty simple simple basic things, right? Money inflows, money outflows. If you have more money coming in than you have going out, you're going to be at a surplus, which is great. You can put more money into savings. You can invest in things. You can put a down payment on that house that you've always wanted. But unfortunately, a lot of people are not in a money surplus. They're usually in a deficit where, they have less money coming in than money going out, right? There's a statistic right now, back in 2020, the average Canadian household is spending $1.70 for every dollar that they earn. So it doesn't take a math wizard or a financial advisor or specialist or anything like that to see that that's not super sustainable. If we're living off debt, and I know it's difficult, right? Especially with everything that's happened with inflation recently, more and more people are living with more and more debt. So how can we combat that? How can we combat this? Well, one of the first things is going to be budgeting. If you can have a proper budget, stick to it, and maintain that will definitely help. I find a lot of people are in the, I think of it as like a mindset pandemic, where they think that they're so far in the hole that they can't get out of it, that they go, well, what's the point in even trying, right? It's when all hope is gone, then you don't think about tomorrow. You're not going to be saving up for something 2-3 years down the road, because you're like, well, I got to focus on right now. I need to get myself that new phone or something because it'll make me feel good inside, and I just feel so terrible inside. So one of the biggest things you can do is just change your mindset and beliefs about money, right? Really, I like to think that money is just a means to an end. It'll help you get the things that you want in life, but it's not everything, right? The real measure of life quality, and this has been studied by different psychologists and in different groups, is relationships, right? It's the quality of relationships you have. If everything revolves around money, you end up living a very just a very shallow life, right? Everything becomes very materialistic, and I found that especially recently with all this technology, we feel like we're so connected when we're reading, a friend's Facebook page or LinkedIn or anything like that. But real connection comes down to two people or two or three or whatever having an actual conversation, like a person-to-person conversation, a meeting of the hearts and minds, so to speak. Because yeah, if you're just sending things online or typing things and texting things out, you'll never really connect with people. And I think that's really what it's all about is connection in these days. One of the big things that I always hear people say is like, I even with my brothers, I have to try and shape their mindset a little bit, because I hear things like, well, I'm disabled, I can't do this. I'm disabled, I can't do that. And really, yes, disabilities are there, and I don't want to take anything away from that. But to limit yourself and put yourself in a box where you can't do things because of your disabilities or because of your current circumstances, it's only hurting you, right? I've heard this, called limiting beliefs, right? If you have a belief that limits your ability to do things or limits your capacity, you're really just putting yourself in a box. And yes, you may have some trauma. Things have happened that are bad in the past, and I don't want to minimize that in any way. But to live with that as an identity doesn't help anyone. So I always recommend, you can learn from the past, but don't live in the past, right? Live in the future, live in the goals and dreams and the things that you want to achieve in life, and feel what it's going to be like to achieve those different dreams, because that's really what's going to help you move forward and push through the adversities that we have in our lives, right? Adversity is always going to happen. There's no cure from adversity. There's no way to just get around it. We will always have trials and tribulations and mountains to climb. But if you focus on what you want to accomplish, you can push through those, right? I always say there's really two things that you can control, and everything outside of what you can control or your sphere of influence is not something that you should really focus too much on, right? Politics right now are going crazy, and the world's going crazy in a lot of different ways, and there's really not a whole lot we can do there, right? I can submit one vote for one of the two sides, but that's not really going to change a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. So I don't focus too much on politics. I like to focus on the things that I can do. I can have a good attitude, and I can do some good activity. And that's why I always say those are the two things that are the best things to focus on, is attitude and activity, because those are the things that you can control and that you can change, right? I guess a couple things just to kind of close out here, or leave you with something, is it's never too late to start, right? Or to change what you're doing. I know a lot of people that I work with that have had 3, 4, 5 careers before. They're in their 50s, and they're just looking for a change. And one of the biggest things I've heard is, well, I've always done this, so I can't do that. Well, you didn't know how to walk before you walked. You didn't know how to talk before you talked, right? Like, things can be learned. That's the beauty of the human spirit, is we can learn things, we can develop, we can grow, we can change. So don't focus on what you've done in the past if you want to have a different future, right? If you're always doing what you've always done, you're going to continue getting the results you've always gotten. So you can really change your script at any point, right? A lot of times, the opportunities aren't going to just fall on your lap, right? I know a lot of what I've said is I've come into some good fortune, right? I've had people say, "Hey, this is something you should check out. Hey, I think this is a good fit," or something like that. But go out there and seek opportunity. If you're seeking opportunity, you're more likely to find it. you have something called your reticular activating system, which is something that you're focusing on, you're going to see more of, right? If you just got a blue Honda and you go driving around, you're going to see a lot more blue Hondas because now you're thinking about it, right? So if you're looking for opportunities, you're going to be more likely to find them. Really, at the end of the day, anything that you want to achieve, it's going to take some work, right? It doesn't come easy, and I'm not saying that it does. You're going to have to work hard for it, and really, that's the key to success, right? If you ask any millionaire or billionaire or people that are big speakers in different spaces or that have achieved anything, they're not going to say, well, my dad gave me this and that's the end of it. It's always going to take a lot of work. So you got to put in the hours, you have to be consistent, and really remember that anything that's worth achieving is going to take some degree of effort at the very least.